Hey everyone, Pugs here with 2 new reviews for y'all. Today we're covering Culture Shock and F.U.N, which is super fun for me because these are 2 episodes that I really love, especially Culture Shock because that's my favorite episode of the season. And to date, I'd say it's probably one of the longest reviews I've written for the forum, so you already know I'm about to have a lot to say. As always, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's been watching, liking, and commenting. For some reason, my Squeaky Boots and Sandy's Rocket review got a little more attention than usual, which, I mean, that ain't really good or bad, it's just something I noticed. And for reasons totally unrelated to that, though, I wanted to emphasize that I make these reviews for me first, and then whoever feels like watching second. I really could not care less about subscribers and getting tons of views. There's a good group of y'all that seem to always be watching anyway, and that's good enough for me. And also, this whole thing is stress relief. If I ever, even for 1 second, start getting stressed because of these recorded reviews, then it's done, immediately. Anyway, just had to get that out of my system real quick. There was a little bit of, audaciousness that I had to shut down right here now. You feel me? So, with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump right into these reviews, shall we? So, like I said in the intro, Culture Shock is my favorite Season 1 episode. Yep, not pizza delivery, not fun, Culture Shock. I'm aware that this is not a popular opinion by any means, but it's mine, and I'm sticking with it. So let's talk about it. Well, first off, I love the opening to this episode. I know I said before that I don't think the show should have kept the surf rock vibe of Season 1, and I stand by that belief. But man, oh man, does it just work here. First, we have a masterful use of K55, and with excellent perspective shots and with great backgrounds, these all combine to create this cool atmosphere that feels exactly like a slow day at the job. Unfortunately, the jobs I've worked at do not have such fun characters like SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs to pass the time with. Anyway, I love the whole segment with SpongeBob cleaning off an essentially spotless table. It's just so SpongeBob, the little workaholic dork, and Mr. Krabs being crabby, yes, pun intended, about the salad bar not bringing in customers makes me laugh for basically no reason. He's just so dramatic about it, I can't help it. Very rarely do I hate a Mr. Krabs trying to get customers plotline. Maybe that's just another unpopular opinion of mine, though, given the hatred of episodes set in the Krusty Krab in season 6 through 8, but that's not important to this review, so let me get back to it. Mr. Krabs is great in this episode. His sheer excitement when a customer comes in, combined with SpongeBob's enthusiasm towards the poor guy who just wanted change, really makes that whole scene. And the ending of the scene where Mr. Krabs launches himself at the penny, it just kills me every time. It's just so absurd. And also, side note, the SpongeBob wiki describes the ending of the scene like this. So, quote, however, Mr. Krabs notices the penny and literally gets to drop on it first. Okay, when the literal synopsis of a scene makes me laugh, that's probably a good sign. Anyway, back to Mr. Krabs. His desire to see his little girl, Pearl, become a star is just so wholesome and sweet, and I love when we get moments like this with the cheap crustacean. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think everyone in this episode shows some enthusiasm in a way that makes each character shown both compelling and hilarious at some point or another. I mean, let's just get through the list. We've got Mr. Krabs, like I just said, who's very enthusiastic about his money and about making Pearl a star. And then we've got SpongeBob, who's very enthusiastic about being able to perform, and throughout the rest of the episode, we see him try to think of an act with varying results. His little tap dance show with the bubble was absolutely adorable. Really, SpongeBob is just so cute in this episode. It makes my heart want to explode. And lastly, for the main characters of this episode, we got Squidward, who's also excited about being able to host a talent show and perform himself in front of everyone. And the secondary characters of this episode even get on this enthusiasm too. There's Pearl, whose cheerful presence, sorry, I love puns, leads to another hilarious sequence of the episode with her cheering. And then we have Patrick, whose laughing scene walked so Little Lee could run. Another thing I'm just now thinking about, I think this episode is the closest we've come so far, chronologically. Obviously, it's happened by now in 2023. It's also happened in my written reviews by now. But anyway, it's the closest we've come so far to having all of the main cast in one episode. So, crash course in SpongeBob history real quick. So, at the time of this episode airing, the main cast was SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Pearl, and Mrs. Puff. Gary was promoted to a main character in season 2, which I actually didn't know when I originally wrote this review, and I might have actually said it in a recorded review as well at some point. So yeah, made a mistake on that one. Oopsies. Anyway, Plankton and Karen were promoted to the main cast in 2004 in the first movie, because they were actually promoted like in the credits of the first movie. So like this episode has everyone except Mrs. Puff in the original lineup, but it does have Gary and Plankton. So look at that, we've got a real ensemble in this episode. Not to mention the inclusion of SpongeBob's parents as well. But like y'all already know that I love when the show actually utilizes much of its ensemble cast. So I'm a fan of that. So back to the actual review and crash course today. So I already talked about Pearl's and Patrick's portion of the episode, so I'll of course go ahead and mention that we've got my main man Gary coming through with the beautiful poetry and a Sandy cameo that really makes that joke. I love how like Sleepy Time kind of expands on the joke here, with Gary clearly being a very smart and cultured and literate mollusk. And then we've got Plankton enacting a very short-lived scheme, which was just the perfect length for me. Just like the talent show it depicts, this episode has lots of like varied moments and jokes and segments that lets many different characters shine, and I love that. And then finally, we've got this episode's grand finale, Squidward dancing horribly and the audience throwing tomatoes at him. This entire scene just gets me rolling every time because the joke's just coming from every direction. Like, the whole, like, build-up to it with, like, Squidward doing some weird, I don't know, I wouldn't call that classical dancing, but, you know, like, calm, light flute music, and then, like, all of a sudden he's doing this techno music, and it was like, I don't even know what to call what he's doing. Anyway, he's doing that. So, like, there's that whole thing, like, the reaction of the audience to Squidward's anger, to Mr. Krabs trying to make a quick buck. Like, the jokes are just flying. And then like when SpongeBob enters the scene, it becomes like a lovely mix of wholesome and hilarious as Squidward deludes himself into thinking the audience wants an encore when all they and we want to see is the little square dude. SpongeBob being universally loved just for cleaning in this episode is just so cute, and it's great to see him win after Squidward kept shutting him down all episode. Also, side note again, but did anyone ever play the game Truth or Square? One of the mini games in that game is based on this episode, which I adore. I specifically played the DS version of that game, which I know is different from all the other versions in terms of like its graphics and its music and some of its gameplay. But like I think that mini game might be in the Wii and Xbox versions, and I'm sure there were more versions, but I wouldn't know. Like it was in those, right? I don't know, but all I know is that that was one of my favorite mini games in that game, and it was based on this episode, so I love that. Anyway, this episode is just filled with so many iconic moments. Like, we've got Squidward's dance, which is definitely in the top 10 of the most recognizable moments in the show. Like, don't at me on that. It's just a fact. We've also got Oh Brother, This Guy Stinks, which is a classic and also a reaction video I find myself using often, as you saw last video. Also using the same shot of the audience, we've got like the complete silence with the footage of a cricket, which I've also used in these reviews because I think I'm very funny. So like Culture Shock like also uses a lot of running gags, something that hadn't really happened too much before this. Like other episodes have had running gags, of course, but like Culture Shock had like 3 between like SpongeBob's constant asking to be in the show, Squidward's rejecting him, and the audience cheering for SpongeBob and booing/throwing tomatoes at Squidward. Like it was like they had a whole routine going on here. Like this episode was concise, it was efficient about its comedy. And it feels like, and I think in that way it feels kind of like a season 2 or 3 episode where like the jokes are coming quicker than like in season 1. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. I don't know. Anyway, if you couldn't already tell, Culture Shock is well into my amazing tier because it's hilarious, it's wholesome, satisfying, and it never lets up. At least for me. I know others might find this episode to be meh, boring, slow, but not me. Not me at all. And because I've always loved this episode, it has a huge nostalgic quality for me. If I actually did rankings past my top 3, I'd probably put this episode in my top 10. It could even be a top 5 contender. This is all theoretically, though. I don't really rank outside of my top 3 episodes of the show. So, like, that's how much I love Culture Shock. And that's why this episode is in the amazing tier, and it's coming in with the highest score so far, a 9.7 out of 10. Next up, the cult classics keep on coming with our next episode, F.U.N. A quite aptly named episode in my opinion, given what a fun episode it is. First off, before I even say anything about this episode, I just wanted to give some love to whoever came up with the design of this episode's title card. I really like it. It's simple and yet it sticks out. Alright, let me get back to the overview. So, in this episode, we get to see more of Plankton, which is definitely a win for me. He's one of those characters that I rarely take issue with, so him being in an episode is usually a good thing for me, especially in these older seasons when he wasn't a main character with a bunch of appearances. This episode is also just such a good showcase of SpongeBob's character. Like, the little dude is just so lovable and friendly, and he cares so much about the people around him. I love main characters that are literally sunshine personified, so I am very pleased by the way this episode plays out. So the beginning of this episode is a fun little chase sequence, and it is appropriately dramatic throughout. I love how the Krusty Krab like goes on lockdown, and then SpongeBob's like, "I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be the hero," and just like it's so funny. I don't know. I just love it. And then like the narrator's all up in there too. Like it's great. I also love all the little bits of visual comedy throughout the scene of SpongeBob chasing Plankton. The ending of the scene with SpongeBob going on about something so pure that it makes Plankton just give up out of frustration. Like, it's just a perfect display of their dynamic. And this is a dynamic that has stood the test of time. I mean, such a huge part about the second movie, which came out 16 years after this episode, was this dynamic between SpongeBob and Plankton. It's a tried and true formula. I also love the part with all the townspeople just like randomly showing up to roast Plankton for no reason, and Squidward especially is hilarious here. And then like they celebrate SpongeBob in like a masterful example of SpongeBob and SquarePants' like underrated talent at random comedy. The way everyone just like walks off is hilarious too. And yeah, I said underrated. Okay, like maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I guess I've seen people talk about like the weird crap that goes down in Bikini Bottom, but like it's not brought up in the same way that absurd random humor is like brought up from a show like Regular Show or Adventure Time is brought up. Like, you know, like, I don't know. I can't tell if it's underrated or not. I feel like it might be, but maybe not. So anyway, just let me move on. I think SpongeBob's attempt to befriend Plankton is like just adorable, especially how he just like continues where he left off even after having the door slammed in his face. He's happy without a care, and I love it. And then of course we get to the fun song, the show's second original song, and it's amazing. I love every part of this song, from the first rendition, the Plankton's version, to the reprise. Like, it's just a very cute song and a great way to get the plot of the episode moving in a fun way. Oh my god, I already say fun a lot, so now it just sounds like I'm making puns every 2 seconds, and as much as I love puns, I promise I'm not doing that for the most part. Anywho, I'd say the fun song is by far the most iconic song in the show. Like, I don't know, but like it's definitely got some steep competition. Like Campfire Song, Ripped Pants, and Gary Come Home, they're all also like massively popular songs, so can't really tell. I feel like the fun song is up there though, because I feel like other than like Gary Come Home, I feel like the fun song has also been memed to hell and back, so I don't know. Who knows? I guess I could see an argument being made for those songs too. Anyway, the remainder of this episode is great as well, with Mr. Krabs trying to get Plankton to crack, and then like Mr. Krabs trying to get SpongeBob to see Plankton for what Mr. Krabs assumes he really is. I especially love the dramatics when the truth does indeed come out, and it really starts to like feel like a soap opera up in here, and I dig it. Like SpongeBob, I can't help but find myself a little saddened that Mr. Krabs was right all along in the end, because even though I know the ending, I always maintain that small piece of hope that Plankton will change. Maybe it's because I love his dynamic with SpongeBob, and I find it adorable when they're friends. To be fair, I do get that wish in the future anyway. Plankton may not change, but especially in the more recent episodes, he's got a pretty decent relationship with the cast, and with SpongeBob especially. Like, this only really started happening after Plankton became a main character, though, and it had been quite a few seasons, and like this makes sense. He's got to have something more than a completely negative relationship with everyone if he's gonna appear a lot, you know? So that makes sense. Another thing that works really well in this episode that I couldn't really fit in into this last little bit of my review is the pacing. Like, nothing feels too long or nothing feels too short either, and it all feels natural. Like, this episode has a lot more plot than a regular SpongeBob episode, I feel like, and it works well here. Or maybe this episode has more emotional and character investment. I'm not sure. Whatever it is, this episode feels different from other episodes so far. It doesn't feel like a collection of gags. It feels like it has like a real story. I mean, all the episodes feel like they have real stories, but like, I don't know, just this one feels different. And like this episode makes those vibes work for it. So, I mean, whatever it is, it's working. So probably unsurprisingly, I've really got no problems with fun. It's a funny and adorable episode throughout with a good ending, and it's these facts that land this episode squarely in my amazing tier, coming in with a score of 9.4 out of 10. As per usual, I'll be closing us out with some closing thoughts of mine. Man, what a real doubleheader we had here today. Obviously, Culture Shock is one of my favorite episodes of the whole show, and then Fun is also just one of the most iconic, with some amazing qualities of its own. Making these two reviews was really fun for me. I prefer to be more positive rather than negative in any case. I also just enjoyed reviewing these two episodes because these last couple weeks have been difficult. Nothing crazy, just stressful and exhausting. You know how it is out here. So I like having Talking SpongeBob to look forward to every week. Really, making these reviews is a multi-day process. I gotta make the script, then the graphics to go along with the script, and then making the graphics takes 5 ever sometimes, and then I gotta find a good time to record it all, and then upload it. It's a whole thing. So, yeah. So that's probably the most personal information you'll ever get out of me in one of these reviews, so yay, I guess. Anyway, I guess that's all I've really got to say about these episodes and this review, so I guess I'll just end things here. Next review is going to be Muscle Bob Buff Pants and Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, so that'll be fun. So until then, I'll see y'all next time.